Good morning, San Diego. Oh, there we go. I'm live. Okay, cool. Hi, everyone that's watching. My name's Kieran, drummer, part-time guitarist, teacher, ex-music uni student, I guess. I'm going to have a potential 2-hour chat today about just like music uni and the experience of doing that, why I did that, and some of the stuff I got out of it. So that's kind of how it links to, I think the title of this was Further Music Education and DIY Touring. So I guess the DIY touring part of it came out the back end of my degree. It was like my big final project. I suppose the first thing I should probably say is just a little disclaimer that obviously my personal experience of university is different to everyone else's. Some people have a great time, some people think it sucks and drop out in 6 months, especially given the current kind of year that we've had. Universities have kind of been thrown into turmoil. So yeah, take everything I say with a pinch of salt, because I'm a bitter human and quite jaded about a lot of things. So that's that. The first thing I wanted to talk about really is just also, excuse the drink, it's really cold here. The first thing I wanted to talk about is just, is it right for me? So I know a lot of people, especially those that are probably at Alton College or just any level of kind of sixth form and are considering university, like especially going down the music path for university. Is it right for you? I guess there's a few things to consider, and I suppose the big thing to consider is why you're going. There are plenty of reasons for, plenty of reasons against going to study at conservatoire level or just a degree level. And really, I suppose the main things that I got out of it and the reason why I chose to do it was because it's kind of like what's the right word? It like kickstarts what you want to do in terms of music very quickly. You can definitely get all of the experience of like that university experience not doing it, just in the real world, gigging and all that sort of stuff. You have to be a lot more proactive about what you're doing. You can't just sit at home and hope you start getting gigs. But yeah, I think one of the big things that I got from it anyway is that well, first things first, you're surrounded by a community of musicians instantly. You're dumped into a pool of anywhere between kind of 50 to a couple of hundred, maybe even a couple of thousand musicians, all in one very intense bubble. And you will spend, 3 to 4, 5 years just playing loads of different kinds of music with loads of different musicians, loads of different people. So yeah, that's kind of a big thing of why I chose to go, is because I wanted to get shit out of the drums. I wanted to meet a load of people, and I wanted to move to a city because I didn't live in a city. And I live in Manchester, so it's a pretty big music city. Yeah, like I say, you can definitely achieve all of those things by not going to music uni. Every famous musician that anyone's ever heard of, almost all of them didn't study at a conservatoire or didn't. Bruce Springsteen didn't go to Berkeley. But then, it's, if you're not going to go to university, it's about going and finding all of those experiences for yourself. So go and join a bunch of bands or start a bunch of bands. Go down local jam nights, all that sort of stuff. Or if you're not a kind of band-centered musician like a drummer or guitarist, if you're a horn player, a violin player, go find your local brass band, orchestra. Go just like getting involved in the local community is super important, and just going to university, I think you're kind of paying for that community of people that are of a certain standard, rather than just like Dave down the pub that plays guitar. Okay, cool. That's that covered. Also, if there's any questions any time through this, just do it in the which side will it be? That side, I think. No, that side. Some comments in the YouTube stream, and I will be reading them and can answer any questions people have. So once you've decided you want to go to uni and study music, good for you. Well done. And it is a big first step. It's a big first step. One of my tutors told me something quite interesting a few years ago, that you're already taking a massive step by deciding, okay, I want to pursue music, because you're willingly jumping into a career that has no steady income, no kind of support systems, really. You don't have medical care or anything. It's certainly taxing mentally. It can be taxing physically. You're having to deal with all different kinds of people, all different ages and backgrounds all the time. And, it's a weird realm of self-employment. So by taking that first step, you've already made a massive life choice by choosing that. So why hold back on anything you do after that? Don't settle, essentially. So yeah, if you make the choice to go to music uni, make the most out of it. Don't get there and then not go to lectures and spend your time hungover in bed. Because I know people that have done that, and they're fine. They're good musicians, they're lovely people, but they probably could have made more of the 4 years of study than they did. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's talk about applying. So obviously applications for universities at the minute are a bit different because, well, for most music courses, depending what the course is, unless it's like a production thing or a composition thing, if you're going in as a player, you will have to showcase some form of playing, obviously, because they want to know that you can play to a certain standard. I think some university degrees, not conservatoire ones, just request you have a certain achievement. So it might be like a grade 8 in your instrument, a grade 5 in music theory, and like an A level in some form of music, whether it be like technology, classical music, jazz, whatever. In fact, across the board, that's kind of a level that universities are at least like the minimum they're expecting. So if you can't play to that level, if you don't have that level of theoretical knowledge, then you're going to find the first year at least of your, it's just, you're going to find that first year hard, essentially, because you will be in a room of people that do have that knowledge, and B, you will be expected to, you'll be building upon that. Okay, so if you've got, say, grade 8 in bass, whatever, then they're not going to be teaching you that same crap. They're going to expect to push you beyond that level of playing ability. So if you can't already hit that, it's going to be a hard first year. Not to say that you can't do that, and that I haven't seen people that don't do that. Grades by no means are any marker of a good musician, but it's just a helpful thing It's like applying for a job. People want to see that you've got your whatever, your GCSEs and your A levels, and that you can do this and do that. They just want a bit of paper that says, okay, yeah, you can do this thing. But then a big part of the application process for unis, for conservatoires especially, is that you have to go in and do a performance. Now, I'm not 100% how that's changed over the last year with COVID. I imagine a lot of it has now become digital submissions, which does make it makes the application not harder, just different. But I know like most universities are trying very hard at the minute to stay open. So I imagine maybe they'll figure out some way of opening up those application processes for people coming in. It kind of depends on the place that you're applying to be truly honest. I'm not entirely sure, but when I did my application, at least, I just signed up for the day. And what did they ask me to prepare? They asked me to prepare so I go to the RNCM, Royal Northern College of Music, up in Manchester, or I did, I should say, finished now. And when I applied, they asked me to prepare one piece of my own, and then one piece that they gave me, which was Rosanna by Toto. And then I had to do some like on the spot stuff that I couldn't really prepare for. So the piece I did as my choice was not necessarily a very drummy thing. I think this is where a lot of people get really bogged down in the application process, is thinking that they have to do like the most technical, shreddy kind of up tempo, whether it's like some bebop thing or some mad Dream Theater shit. Like I played a Foo Fighters tune. If you ever listen to a Foo Fighters tune, the drums are not complicated. It's like for like 4 minutes. But I did that with conviction, and I think it's dependent on what sort of course you're applying for. So I went and studied on a popular music performance course. If you're going for something more like a jazz-centered course, I know some guys that went to Guildhall and Trinity and Royal Academy in London. And so if you're going to go for like a more jazz or classical-centered course, like basically if you know what you're going for, look at what they are asking of you. If you're going for a jazz course, it may sound dumb, but learn some standards. Learn some standards in and get comfortable with ones that you like. I think is important. You don't have to show off at all. The guys, the people, sorry, not the guys, because the people that will be assessing you are obviously going to be like amazing musicians, well, they usually are, and so you're not going to impress them or blow their minds by shredding or doing any crazy chopsy stuff, because they've seen it all before. They've had hundreds of students come through the college and do exactly the same thing. What they want to see is not so much that you're like an amazing player there and they want to just like scoop you up and be like, oh cool, okay, this guy's great on keys, let's have him. What they want to see is that you've got the potential and the drive to be better. And I know that's quite a hard thing to quantify, but that is a lot of the assessment process at these kinds of places. It's very subjective. There's nothing kind of set in stone. It's not like mathematics where it's like 1 + 1 is 2. There's none of that. It's how you come across. So picking a piece of music that you can get emotionally invested into, I think, far surpasses something that you think looks impressive. Because at the end of the day, the real thing that people connect with in music is the emotional connection, so I think that's, if you can play off of that, you'll probably do far better. But again, like I say, it depends on the course. If you're going for more classical, if you're, say, a French horn player or something, I don't know entirely the process, but again, it's the same sort of thinking. You don't have to pick something that is just a black page of a million dots. You can pick a piece you really enjoy playing, something you connect with, and just play that to the best possible standard that you can, because doing something simple but well always sounds better than something complicated but shit, essentially. I think that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, and then I guess in the rest of my application, so I had to do the piece I chose, which was a Foo Fighters tune, and then I had to do what did I say it was? Yeah, Rosanna by Toto. But that's a sort of that's similar to telling the university, the conservatoire, that you have your grade 8. That's kind of them giving you a challenging piece of music and wanting to see that you can step up to that standard, that you getting your grades or whatever wasn't just a fluke, and that you can actually perform to that standard. I personally fluffed my given piece. At the time, and I still kind of do it now, I had a problem where I'd play and then I'd zone out, and I started staring out the window, and I just missed something. And I came back in, I kind of did a little fill or a little flourish and came back in. But I don't know why. I just zoned out. It just happened. So I actually ended up getting a reserve spot. I didn't actually get offered a place for the RNCM until the summer. So I spent a good few months, because I only applied to the one place as well. That was stupid. Yeah, don't apply to one place. It's really stressful. I spent the summer kind of contemplating what would I do if I didn't get in. And I spoke with Catherine, who's running this stream, a lot about it. And I spoke with my parents and my friends a lot about it. And I made some kind of other life plans just in case I didn't get in. And then thankfully I got a call whilst at a festival. It was the head of the course, and he said, right, one of the drummers has decided to, he doesn't want to come this year. So do you want to come instead? I was like, yeah, definitely. And that's a big thing as well. You can't, if you get the place, you generally can't defer your place. Unless there's exceptional circumstances, you can't defer your place like a normal degree. Because you might be amazing when you come in and do the audition, but then you will defer your place and you might spend the whole year not playing, come back the next year and just be rusty as all hell, not be able to play your instrument. So yeah, that's a big thing. Cool. That's the application stuff covered. What was my next note? Pop versus classical versus jazz. Okay, so this is kind of dictated by instrument choice a lot of the time, but also just the music that you like. There are so many different courses out there that cover so many different types of things, and it very much depends what you're going for. So if you're going for pop stuff, like I did, kind of pop, rock, contemporary music, there's obviously the RNCM that I studied at. There is ACM in Guildford. Those guys are great. there's BIM, which I think they have a place in Brighton, London, and Manchester. I don't know. I think there might be one in Germany as well. It's kind of fun. Yeah, and there's a couple of smaller courses as well. There's another place in Manchester at Salford Uni that does a similar kind of degree. I personally went for the RNCM because it seemed more. They seemed more selective in who they let onto the course. Yeah, that's all I'll say about that. But I don't want to sound like a dick, but I know certain people that have been through places like ACM and have come out the other side like amazing players, but I think a lot of that is because they are very driven musicians anyway, and would have succeeded wherever they went. I've also seen a lot of people come out the other side of those kinds of places and have spent 2 or 3 years just getting high and not really getting much out of it. Oh, Leeds. Leeds is the other place that has a great pop course. Almost forgot. So yeah, that's why I went for the RNCM. I did consider Leeds as well, because I heard good things about that place. In terms of if you want to study jazz, obviously, like London is kind of the place to be. This is a big thing as well. If you're studying music, you want to be where the music is. It might sound stupid, but you want to be in a place where there is a community and a scene already there for you to just like jump into and go to gigs and see live music and talk to people. Yeah, so if you're going for jazz, London is typically the place that most people go for, just because it's kind of the central hub of the UK. And they've got all of the kind of big name colleges there. So there's Royal Academy of Music, Royal College of Music, Guildhall, Trinity, and there's loads of other like kind of smaller places as well. There's some really good courses I've heard about elsewhere in the UK as well. I can't remember the names of any of them, but I think part of that's just check out the cities, because that's super important and a super important part of moving somewhere new. You don't want to go somewhere to study music and then the city itself not have a kind of bubbling nightlife of venues and gigs. So if you're looking for universities, have a look at like Leeds is a great example because they've got a cool jazz course there and they've got an awesome kind of little scene bubbling away over there, and Manchester's got a pretty cool scene as well of that sort of stuff. Yeah, so having a look at the city that you will be living in as well, super important. If you're going to move to Guildford for ACM, it's like, okay, Guildford has some really, really great venues, and it's connected by the train system to London and Portsmouth and Brighton and loads of other places. So it's great for kind of commuting to a bunch of different cities. So you can consider things like that if you're willing to get on a late night hour-and-a-half train. In terms of classical courses, again, I'm not going to preach too much about this because I don't know loads about them, but I know people that have done them. Again, a lot of the places that do either like pop stuff or jazz stuff are typically establishment, like classical music establishments first. So the RNCM is one of them, like Royal College and Royal Academy in London are both. Like the jazz courses there are very small parts of quite a large society of classical musicians. So yeah, just doing your research and look at like who teaches there. That's something I found interesting is it's okay to kind of semi-stalk who you might be learning under. So like a big thing for me about coming to Manchester is that one of the drum tutors is a guy called Dave Hassel, who is like a Yoda of the drums. And like I didn't really know who he was before coming to university and before meeting him. But I had one of his books. Didn't really make the connection until I met him. But I had one of his books, and like I just went and did a bit of research and found out that like, oh holy crap, he's done like all of this kind of session stuff or whatever. And yeah, you can do a similar thing with any of the places you're interested in. Most of these conservatoires have like a section of their website that will have the members of staff. Go through that and check out who the members of staff are. Like, see what they do. Type their names into YouTube, Google, LinkedIn, whatever. See, you know, who do they play with? Who have they played with? Have they been on any like big recordings? All this sort of stuff. You know, you want to be learning from people that are still actively doing what they're teaching, because the music industry moves so quickly that if that person is solely a teacher, I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but if that person is solely a teacher and doesn't play, then how do you know that you're getting up-to-date and correct information? You know, they might have stopped gigging 15 years ago when, you know, Spotify wasn't really a thing. So how can they advise you on things like that when they're out of touch with the current musical climate? So that's something to watch out for. And do it with like not even the instrumental tutors, but just like all the tutors. When I first moved here, I found it really interesting. I looked at all the teachers that I was going to have for the first term, and I just looked them up. And it just meant that I had like an instant connection with my tutors when I showed up. You know, the guy that was teaching me about how to use DAWs, which is like the software you use to record stuff in, if you don't know, like Logic and Ableton. So we're having lessons in how to use that. But he's this guy called Rodrigo Constanzo, and he's an amazing like noise kind of experimental musician, and never would have known that if I hadn't just done a little bit of research. And so we had loads of great discussions about kind of cool bits of technology and things like that. Cool. Okay. There's enough on that. Get on my drink. Like I say, if anyone's got any questions as well, please do feel free to just chuck them in the chat, because I'd be interested to see if anyone wants to know anything like particular about anything I've talked about so far, or if you've got any other questions. So the next note I'd made for myself is about the lifestyle, which is obviously quite different at the minute because there's no gigs happening. So that makes music university really weird. But when everything returns to normal, and it will, you know, it will take time, but everything will return to normal, or as normal is. The lifestyle surrounding music conservatoire existence plays a massive role in it, to a degree that you wouldn't really think of. Yeah, so obviously you can sit in your classes all day and learn music theory and learn how to play your instrument and learn industry things and all this sort of stuff. That sort of stuff is only useful if you go out and try it. You know, you kind of have to go and do things and get it wrong to learn. You have to do that. It's the same with anything. You know, you kind of learn how to do something, you get it wrong, try again. It's exactly the same, and you will only get that experience from going and doing gigs. And you know, if that's what you're interested in. So like for me, for example, Like I joined function bands, which is like wedding bands. I play with like I play for artists, like singer-songwriters. I also play my own music and in more like cohesive original ensembles. And so like and when I first moved here, I tried to go to a gig like every night I could. I'd like get back from lectures, do all my work, because really it's music work. Like it's not hard, it's pretty fun most of the time. So I'd get back, like do my practice, do my work, whatever, and then eat some food and go out, like just go out and find a gig that was happening. Because even if you end up like I ended up going to loads of gigs just by myself, and that's like, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. That's really fun. Yeah, because you can just find. I mean, you're building this kind of network. You've already got your bubble of musicians at your university, and then you're just expanding that network by going and meeting people in the real world from going to gigs and going to and either like playing gigs or just going and watching and talking to people after their set. If you really enjoyed something, just go up to someone and talk to them about it. You might spark a connection, and then that person might remember you 6 months down the line and go, "Oh, that person was super nice, and they said they played bass or something, and I need a bass player. Let's call them up." That sort of stuff happens all the time. Yeah. Oh, that's cold. So what was I saying? I don't know. What was I saying? Gigs. That was it. Yeah. Yeah. So getting out in whatever city you're in and just exploring the musical landscape, because you will find music that you like. You will also find completely new and alien and bizarre music, and go to stuff of all different levels. If you've got the money for it, go to the like local massive pop gig. Go see Ariana Grande when she comes into town, because you might not like the music, but you can certainly appreciate the level of musicianship and the proficiency that goes into putting on a show like that. Like I went and saw, when was it, like 2 years ago maybe, I went and saw Take That. It was amazing. I know some of the songs because my mum likes the band. I'm not a massive fan, but they're still pretty good. It's good pop music. But I went because my girlfriend at the time was in the show, and just like watching the discipline of someone playing to an arena of 20,000, 30,000 people, it's insane. But then going from that and then going to the local, like, just kind of, well, not smoky jazz club, but the smokeless jazz club, and watching some like trio just blitzing away for 4 hours, completely improvised. Two completely alien worlds of playing, but still connected in some way. There's discipline there in both of those that can be appreciated from any musician, hopefully. And that's a good point to make, actually. If you're going to do something like this, don't limit yourself to the music that you like. Like I very much started my degree, moved up here, mostly just being into kind of rock and metal stuff, and I just thought, I'm just going to end up like playing in a couple of rock bands and metal bands and that sort of it. But like throw that out the window instantly, because you can learn so much from other styles of music, which can then be applied into everything else. Everything feeds back. Everything feeds back to just like you as a musician. So, you might not like folk singer-songwriters or something, but go down to an open mic night that week and just check it out and see what you think. Because there might be one person there that you really connect with. Or you might decide that you hate it and that you got absolutely nothing from it. But then you know that. And you know that it's like, okay, maybe that sort of thing's not for me. But yeah, so the skills I've learned from playing in rock bands can transfer across to folk and country, which can transfer across to jazz, which can transfer across to orchestra playing, which, it all feeds into itself. And knowing how that applies to one another is only learned through either going and playing the music or going and watching a pro do it, and really listening. Okay, cool. That's that. Before I move on, I will say, obviously going to gigs does mean that you're at bars and clubs all the time. You don't have to get drunk at every gig. It shouldn't have to be said, but it should be said. You don't have to drink at every single gig. You will spend so much money, and know why you're going to the gig. Because I've certainly gone to some things intending to go check out some amazing guitar player, and then I just had a few drinks too many, and you just stop really focusing on the music. If you're going to some party band to go have a good time, then yeah, go for it, go nuts, whatever. But if you're going to get something from the night, want to expand your mind, you want to learn more about jazz by going and watching a real quartet playing in a bar or something, then just have a tap water. It's free. Yeah, and these places can be expensive as well. Yeah, you don't want to be spending all your government loan money on beer. Not all of it, anyway. Some of it, not all of it. So, the classes and the courses. So, it's obviously dependent on where you go and study and what course you go on. But a general things that are usually covered by most courses will definitely be your musicianship. Wherever you go, you will hopefully get lessons in the instrument that you play. If you don't, then don't go there, because what's the point if you're not getting better at your instrument? So you'll certainly have musicianship kind of classes, which I think are probably the most important part of the entire study. It's the thing that's at the core of everything you do, unless you're going and doing production or business or management or something like that. If you're going onto a course as a player, your playing should be at the core of it. It sounds stupid, but it is. So don't miss a lesson because you're hungover. Be respectful to those tutors. That they're there to help you. This isn't. I think a big problem that a lot of people have with this kind of course is that they treat it too much like school, and they just decide that it's I don't need to show up to this or that because I know that already. I've learned everything I need to learn. Check your ego at the door, because there's always something you can learn. And at the end of the day, if you would rather stay in bed rather than go to your lecture, that's you're paying a lot of money every year to not go to your lessons. What's the point? You should have just stayed at home. But you can stay in bed once you're done with a degree. Just go to your lectures. Because the people there, you might think they don't have anything to tell you, but they do. They really do. And sometimes it just takes you being, learning is a two-way street. It takes a good teacher. It also takes a good student. You've got to like show up, give a shit, show that you give a shit, and put the work in. Because if you don't put the work in, you're not going to develop whatever it is that you want to do. Whether it be wanting to learn, like wanting to develop your oral kind of listening skills, or your playing skills, or anything like that. Showing up and giving a shit, super important. So some of the other things that I had covered. So obviously playing, big part, very big part. Theory is like, even as a drummer, the theory is super important. And I think, I don't want to just make a general sweeping statement, but it's typically drummers and singers that are the worst at theory, from my experience. And I think a lot of that has to do with the instrument that we play. Like, we don't apply it really in practice. If you're a horn player, a guitar player, a keys player, it's kind of ingrained in what you do. You can't pull off playing some solo over a blues without understanding what notes to play to make it sound good. Otherwise, it just sounds like some kind of incoherent mess. But obviously, you can't really apply that theoretical knowledge so much if all you're doing is hitting drums or singing. Something I would say to singers is, actually to any instrumentalist is, if you don't, then just, you don't have to pick it up to an amazing level, but try a second instrument. Just try playing anything else, because it will vastly widen your understanding of like what everyone else is thinking. So I play drums primarily, but I also just do a little bit of guitar and things like that. Not to any like amazing standard at all, but like I know where the notes are. I can do a few chords and riffs and stuff, and like I know the layout of a keyboard and can do a few chords and little melodies and stuff, but nothing good. But it's enough that if I'm in a group of people, like say I'm in a band, and we're struggling to, I don't know, like write the we're writing a chorus for a song, and we can't figure out why it's not working. There's something not quite working there. And it's helpful to be able to be that person in the band that if you're the drummer, you can join in the conversation about the chords and the melody. You can say like, oh, try this thing instead. And vice versa. If you're the guitar player or the keys player or the bass player or the singer or whatever, it's helpful to be able to like have a bit of knowledge about every instrument that you're going to be interacting with. If you're trying to explain something to a drummer, it's like, oh, can you just do the thing? No, like if you can, even if you just like beatbox the idea, like that's makes it so clear to the person that you at least kind of understand what you're hearing in your head, and being able to communicate what you hear in your head is really helpful. And that's a skill that I suppose you will probably learn through doing stuff. But being able to like vocalize instruments. I know it sounds really dumb, but being able to vocalize different instruments is quite it's a small skill, but it's really helpful. If you can turn to the singer and just say like, oh, what about this harmony? It's like doo-doo-doo. Or you can sing like the guitar line or something. You don't have to be a virtuoso singer or beatboxer, but if you can just do it to a degree where you're hitting notes ish, and people are understanding like the melodic shape and the rhythmic kind of idea, then then you're able to just communicate with everyone in the ensemble so much more effectively. And if everyone can do that, then it makes working so much easier. Okay, what other courses and classes were covered? So from my course anyway, this is the sort of thing that comes in varying degrees on different courses. We had lectures to do with industry, which is really helpful. You learn different stuff about like the social media game and making websites and all the stuff that you don't really think of as a musician in this day and age is really important. And if you watched Ash's talk yesterday morning, then he covers this stuff in way more detail than I ever could. But yeah, it's unnervingly important. And it's good to get your head around this stuff early on, because the sooner you can, especially if you're, say, writing your own, like trying to promote your own music or get gigs or like promote yourself as a kind of session player or anything, anything that is a form of self-promotion. You can't just pop a flyer on a corkboard in a communal space and hope someone calls you these days. You have to have like the Instagram presence and Facebook presence and a website and all this sort of stuff, so that if someone turns around to you and says, "Oh, hey, how do I need a drummer," and you just send them a link and it has everything there. So it's important stuff to learn. That's quite a weird thing as well. Is that a lot of people post? There are like groups on Facebook where people post gigs in the local area or just across the whole UK sometimes, and so like having a finger on that sort of stuff. You don't always have to go for it. I kind of don't go for that stuff that much, but if that's the world that you want to go towards, of like session playing and playing in theatre shows and function gigs and wedding bands and stuff like that, gigs that have money behind them, if you want to earn some money, that typically is a way that a lot of people get gigs. If you're not getting gigs off of recommendation and word of mouth, then that's quite a big thing as well, as people will just put up a post saying, I need a sax player for a wedding this Saturday. Anyone free, and you get like 20 people replying. Question: would you recommend that people start building a social media presence before applying to uni, so that they have an acumen for the modern music industry? No, I wouldn't say that that's the most important thing in the world, because I don't know exactly how much universities look at your online presence, because I don't work for a university, so I can't exactly say. It can't hurt. That, I suppose that's the most I can say about that, is that the worst that could happen is that they see it and they see that you're an actively gigging musician. Or I suppose the worst that could happen is they just don't see it. And even in like a local scene, having some kind of like online presence is helpful, because it helps you to expand beyond that, whether it's your town or your borough or whatever. It helps you to expand out of that to meeting people locally or internationally. So it's not the most important thing in the world to have that social media stuff pre-set up. And like I'm talking about, like, this is why I went to the music uni, because and why I went to RNCM, because they have courses on how to develop this stuff. It's the same as the playing thing, and when you're doing your application, doing your audition, you don't have to have you don't have to be a perfectly rounded player. You also don't have to have the amazing social media presence and the amazing this and be the perfect kind of theory bob and a producer and all this sort of stuff. the reason why you're going to the university is to learn this stuff. So it's okay to have weak spots, but to be aware of what those weak areas are, I think is probably helpful. Yeah, if you're able to pinpoint what your weaknesses are, and being that level of self-awareness is probably pretty helpful, because you're able to go in knowing what it is that you're like, why you're going to further education. You know, if you're thinking, oh, okay, I want to go to this place because I want to get better at jazz. You know, I want to be a jazz player, but I also want to play in a big band, or I also want to learn about the side of the industry at the same time. Then find the course that does that for you. Find what you want to do and what weak areas you want to improve on, and then find the thing that suits that. No point doing something you don't want to do, because it's 3 or 4 years sometimes, and you know, it's a lot of time to waste doing something you don't want to do. Cool. What was my next point? Bands and ensembles. Okay, yeah. So obviously a big part of going to a music conservatoire is the like playing in ensembles part of it. That obviously differs in what course you're on. If you're on a classical music course, then typically the university sets up. I know the universities often have a lot of ensemble opportunities that it's like you have to apply to get in. So it'll be orchestras and varying, like quartet, quintet, like trios, all the different varying sizes of stuff that you can apply for to get into, I think is normally the way that it works with those sorts of things. But don't be afraid to go and look externally as well. You know, find the local orchestra and go sit in or something like that. With jazz courses, I know typically there's an emphasis on like big band playing, and then also like smaller ensemble playing, because they're kind of the two realms that you will operate in a lot. And that's not to say that jazz colleges are stagnant and stuck in the 50s and 60s, like a lot of people think they might be. A lot of that mode of thinking is you're learning the kind of tradition, you're learning the history of the music. You can't push forward without first at least acknowledging what's come before. And so that's a really big part of those courses is, and to be fair, like the popular music kind of contemporary courses as well, a big part of it is understanding that there is 100 years of musical culture behind you. You know, you've got a lot of catching up to do, and it will take your entire life to fully appreciate all of that, I'm sure. But that's a big part of the courses of these courses is that you're understanding and respecting and learning that kind of back catalogue of music and culture, and so that you can make informed decisions about what you do. You know, they're not necessarily chucking you into a big band because you're going to be a big band player all your life, or they're not chucking you into some like session orchestra thing, some like pop thing, because that's what you're going to do all your life. But it's because like it's a thing that's come before. It's a skill that may be called upon you at some point, so it's helpful to be able to do that thing. But it's also just learning the context of where the music has come from, so that you can push it further. You know, and you never know what you might draw inspiration from. You might be like a through and through like thrash metal gent kind of guy, or gal, or whatever. or you might be super into, I don't know, like Dua Lipa and Charlie XCX and Ariana Grande, but being able to draw influence from music that's come before can then inform what you've done or what you're about to do. You might not think it, but you might draw inspiration from some like Count Basie big band thing. You never know. It might just be like a rhythmic idea or a chord or a melody or a feel or a feeling. But learning that context is really important. Yeah. Is that what I've got to say about that? Yeah, sure. All right, cool. Oh yeah, and then on the realm of bands, so obviously you've got the ones that are university-led, like big bands, orchestras, whatever, hot things. But another part of playing in uni is obviously like starting your own stuff up. Don't be afraid to just like go and make a band the first week and just see what happens. You know, get in a room with people, and you don't have to have like an album written. Just get in a room and play with some people and see what happens. Just jam. Yeah, not being afraid to improvise, even if it's just like two people in a room. You know, whatever bizarre combination of instruments, if you can just find like one other person, get in a room with them and just play something and see what happens. Because it's a great way to just, if you've not got any gigs, especially, then that's a great way of just taking like what you've learned that week and trying to apply it in a stress-free, no pressure jam with a friend, with a housemate or a flatmate or whatever. You know, if you've been learning so what me and some friends used to do in first year is we had like this prog trio Rush ripoff thing. And what we used to do is we'd take like the rhythmic ideas that I'd been learning that week in my drum lessons, and the harmonic ideas that the guitarist James had been learning in his lessons that week, and we'd just like try write a song using, or like even if it was just like a riff, using those things, so that we're taking that knowledge out of the theoretical realm and putting it into a practical application. So that's always something that's quite fun and allows you to just yeah, because there's obviously like different stages of learning that sort of stuff. There's the very like technical kind of, you're sitting and like reading a book or listening to a piece of music and trying to play along, and it's the technical side of it. But what you really want is to, like, each of those things that you're learning every week, and like it can be a lot of stuff sometimes, but everything that you're learning every week, you want to find a way of integrating that into your playing, because you don't want to be sat, when it comes to, if you come to do an actual gig, you don't want to be sat there thinking like, think about rudiments like Aaron did, or think about just, what else should I be right now? You don't want to be thinking that stuff, because if you are thinking that stuff, you're not present in the music. You're not, yeah. And if you're not present in the music, then you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to just end up like aimlessly shredding some scale, and everyone's going to like turn around and be like, "What the hell's this guy doing? Shut the fuck up." So yeah, like doing that kind of playing in a no stress, zero pressure environment is really helpful, because you can then you can internalize those skills to the point where they're muscle memory, and you don't have to think about the technical side of it, and then you're able to just, like, what I've heard a lot of people talking about is this kind of like flow state thing that you're trying to achieve, where it's basically, if you can hear it in your head, then you should be able to sing it, and then if you can sing it, you should be able to play it. And then if you can do all three, then you should be able to make that connection like instantaneously in the moment. So that's. I mean, I still can't do that half the time, but it's quite an interesting thought process that if you're playing a piece of music, you want to go for something and land it, and it be musically coherent and not just like someone falling down the stairs, and it works and you pull it off, rather than like, oh, you slipped up because there was that technical thing that you didn't quite practice enough. Okay, cool. So on the subject of bands, I'm going to kind of divert a bit now. So if there's any other questions about university stuff, then ask away. But I'm going to move on to like bands territory now. So whilst playing at uni, I've gotten involved in a lot of different kind of styles of music and a lot of different ensembles and genres of music and things like that, which I think just for me is just because it's fun. More than anything, I like kind of I know that there are kind of different areas of my playing that I want to stretch, and I can't necessarily stretch them all in one band. If I could, it'd be a really weird band. You know, like for me anyway, it's like I love doing the just kind of like Dave Grohl, hard as hell rock drumming, but I also love just like soundscape and really soft, delicate kind of Joey Waronker. Like he plays for Beck. Really delicate playing and all the kind of like country guys and blues stuff as well. But then I also play in a band where it's like kind of art poppy dance stuff. And so I've managed to get in, and there's still other things that I want to try do that I don't have a band for, that I want to push those areas of my playing. But it's nice to have some different things where it's like, okay, well, when I'm playing in the folk setting, I'm in like, it's like this mode. But when I'm in the rock band, I'm in this mode. And so that I'm like in the context of music, pushing my playing to like pushing my playing as far as I can go. And I don't mean in terms of like playing every single note, because like in the folk band, I hardly play anything. But that is still pushing my playing, because it's more about exploring sounds and touch and feel on the instrument rather than like crunchy chords or crazy chops or anything like that. So in those bands, it's quite interesting to see that there's actually some like quite different and alien dynamics that sometimes end up happening. Typically, like in any band I'd been in before coming to university, the dynamic was always like a shared thing. This might be different for whoever's listening, but for me anyway, because I was mostly in kind of rock and metal, like that sort of area of bands, it was like a shared experience. You know, there was like everyone kind of wrote a bit in the band, and it was like an even split. Everyone was like invested in it emotionally and financially sometimes, and that is the way that most bands of that style operate. But a big thing of coming to college was that everyone, or almost everyone, has their own thing, because people want to explore expressing themselves musically, and like that's totally fair. But it also means that you get like so many different bands and ensembles that not everyone can be, you know, 100% emotionally invested and financially invested, especially, and they can't invest, you know, all their time into having like 6 rehearsals a week, because, well, for example, like I'm in like 4 or 5 different bands, and like that's not loads, but it's enough to keep you busy. But it does also mean that there's kind of an understanding between me and some of the other people in the band that it's like, okay, so it's very definitely like this person's band. It's almost like a kind of Steely Dan situation where you've got the one or two people in the ensemble that write the music and fund everything, or like they're the cornerstone of the ensemble, and then everyone else in it, we can still be great friends and be emotionally invested in it and love the project, but are almost seen as session players. And unfortunately, not yet anyway, none of us are at the level where the session players can be paid. But sometimes with those smaller ensembles, like that's just, you have to put in the groundwork to get the reward. And so, so there's even my band Cold Comforts, so I play guitar and sing in that, but it's like primarily my thing because I write all the music, or like 95% of it, and like organize all the recording sessions. I pay for like music videos and rehearsal rooms and all that sort of stuff. So that's like, it's my responsibility to get that stuff done. And then the other three guys in the band, whilst being like my best friends in the world and amazing musicians, we have this kind of understanding, this back and forth understanding that it's like they are in other bands. They are also in 5 or 6 other bands. They can't possibly help pay money for rehearsal rooms for every single band, because then, especially when they're not getting paid for what they're doing, they'd all be broke as hell. So that's quite an interesting dynamic that happens quite a lot, I've found anyway, is that you have people that have their project and you kind of session play in it. But it's a fun dynamic anyway. It's a fun way of playing. Okay, moving on from that. There are, I suppose it's probably a good way to transition into the tour booking side of stuff. So when I was in my 4th year of uni, we had to do, it was like a work placement for our 4th year. And for my work placement, loads of people did different things. Some people did teaching, some people went and did some stuff abroad. Some people went and worked at record labels. Some people worked with festivals, doing the booking and the organising. Some people worked with charities. There's loads of sorts of stuff that we ended up doing. But I ended up just saying, look, I want to do my own thing, because I was doing enough, so function band stuff, weddings, sessions, all that sort of stuff, and session playing, so with the bands that I've just talked about, that I was kind of busy enough with that anyway, and that's what I could see myself doing after university, had COVID not hit. So I kind of said to them, look, this is what I'm going to do, and I think a few other people did it as well. I know some people so like Sam Harding and Alex Blake, they both moved down to London and they now play with Arlo Parks, so that's pretty cool. But that's what they did for their placement. So so what I chose to do was something akin to that, of like, I'm just going to go and do my own thing. I'm going to set it up whilst I've got the safety net of, like, I've still got government loan coming in, and I don't have real world responsibilities really, because I'm still in the degree. I was still, don't have to worry about council tax and boring stuff like that. So what I decided to do was I wanted to kind of elevate the band, Cold Comforts. I wanted to elevate it sort of to not really the next level, because we'd only just really started. I'd only been writing songs for that project for maybe like half a year. So I basically wanted to take the time that I had left at university, and I wanted to take this opportunity to... My thinking behind it was a Beatles in Hamburg experience on a smaller and possibly slightly less effective scale. So basically, if you don't know what I'm talking about, the Beatles went and spent months in Hamburg, just like playing before they even were the Beatles. They were the Silver Beatles, and just playing like all the local clubs. They played like 2 or 3 things a night. And the point that I'm getting to is that they did that. They came back. They changed their name to the Beatles, released some singles, and then went and just did the most blistering like leg of shows around the UK that you could imagine, because they'd spent months just becoming this like crazy good band, writing these amazing songs. So that was kind of my thinking behind it, just on a smaller scale, because I didn't have months, I didn't have the money to take us to Hamburg, and the gigging scene has very much changed to what it was in the 60s, obviously. So what my thought was is that I was going to book this tour around the UK. We'd go do that, even if it meant playing to, you know, a bloke and his dog or the sound engineer, like just having the experience of getting in the car, loading all our stuff on top of us, sitting cramped for like 6 hours, and getting to some bizarre little venue in the middle of nowhere and just playing a show and learning that way. And it kind of goes full circle back to what I was talking about at the start of the talk of learning something and then going and doing it in the real world and making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. You can sit as a band in a rehearsal room for forever. You can be in a rehearsal room for as long as you like, but then you will come out to gig and something will always go wrong. It's just the way it is. Especially if lots of technology stuff is involved, you know, if you've got backing tracks or like Ableton Live stuff or crazy keys patch setups or something, or, you know, anything else going on. The first few times you do something, it will always go wrong, guaranteed. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's just a learning experience. Because when you're in a rehearsal space, it's a safe environment, you know. There's no pressure there. You can get things wrong. You can stop songs. If something breaks, you can just stop and fix it. So, yeah, the idea being is that we'd go and do gigs and make loads of mistakes, probably annoy the hell out of people that didn't want to see our crappy little band, but then come out the other side of it a much better band. Yeah, I'd say that it worked. You know, the first gig that we did was pretty shaky, pretty ropey, and you know, loads of mistakes in terms of the playing. I was awkward as all hell because we'd done like one gig before we went out and did the tour, and so I just like was not accustomed to talking on stage to people. I'm still not really, because this was only December last year. It wasn't that long ago, and there's not really been any gigs this year, so the standard has probably dropped a bit, but we'll get back to it. But by the end of the tour, it was amazing. Like we just kind of got to the point where you get into the rhythm of everything, and things that you had to think about loads before, even silly little things like, oh, where's my tuner, or where's the power supply, or oh, what was the next chord in that song, or the lyric or something. By the last day of the tour, we were just like, plug in, turn up, boom, and the gig just flew by. So yeah, I'd say to a degree it did the job that it intended. That being said, as lovely as that all sounds, booking the tour was an absolute nightmare. And I have no one but myself to blame. Yeah, any sensible person that has been in a band to any modicum of success will tell you that touring after having done 2 gigs and released no music is an awful idea, because no one will come to those gigs, and the gigs will be very hard to book. And this was true. So what we did pre-booking the tour is actually to book the entire tour, I sent round to promoters a demo. We didn't even have like a recorded song. We just had this crappy little like half-finished demo that I was sending around to venues and promoters and whoever I could. and it was only like maybe a few weeks before the tour was set to begin that we sort of turned around and thought, oh, we really need something for people to check out whilst once we've announced these dates. we need something to be like a reason for going on tour, because we couldn't really promote it as the Cold Comforts does the Beatles in Hamburg. So we like hastily recorded our first single. I think we did it in like a week in a church. It's super boomy and I think it sounds great, but it's funny. The pressure made us make quick decisions. We didn't sit around going, oh, what should we do for this guitar tone or this chorus or whatever. Just like plug the amp in and put the mic in front of it and go. We did it like all in our flat basically, and James, the guitarist, mixed it. And then so we had it out. I think it was maybe 2 weeks before the tour was due to start, so that we could. And like, this is again by no means a good way to do this, but we just thought we should release the single before the tour was announced, so that we could be like, okay, you've heard the song, now come hear it in gigs, in real life, alongside a bunch of other unreleased music. So we did that, and to book the tour. So this is where a lot of my lectures at university actually came in really handy. I had a tutor actually helping me, giving me some advice on some stuff, which was pretty invaluable. So I've got to say thanks to my tutors, Jen and Suki, for helping me out with that. But so the first thing I did was I just trawled the internet, and I asked, I just put recommendation thing out on Facebook and Instagram, and I asked all my friends, and I absolutely trawled through the internet of just like looking up venues in this city, promoters in this city, and I made I looked at something I found really helpful actually as well, was looking at bands who already had tours booked and looking at their posters and looking at where they were playing, and to kind of gauge like, okay, they're this size band and they're playing this size venue. So, if they were a similar size band or, just a bit bigger, it's like, okay, so it's achievable that we could be like the support band at that venue. We could be the opening band at that venue, something like that. So I did a lot of that, and spreadsheets were my best friend for the next month. I'm sure if anyone wants to see that, they can just message Catherine. I can send it across to people if they really want to see it. It's pretty chaotic, but essentially what I did is I just wrote down like the city, the name of the venue, and then like the name of the person I was contacting, then like phone number, email address, the website I found any of these details on, like Twitter handle, Facebook, like any point of contact I could find for that venue or that person, I put on there. And then the column right at the very end was like, it was like a yes/no thing, like had I contacted them, and how did I contact them? Was it an email? Did I call them? And then I had a separate one. So I did that for venues, and then I had a separate slide in the spreadsheet that is for promoters. I also used the same spreadsheet for press. So there's a third slide or panel or whatever they're called on the spreadsheet, Excel stuff, for like radio and press and bloggers and magazines. So exactly the same process, like names, email addresses, phone numbers, websites, just a huge list of like 100 or 200 names, so that when the single came out, I just called these people or emailed these people. So once I'd collated all of that information, it was then the very long process of contacting all these people, which just so happened to start when I just moved house and had no internet yet. So I did it all out of the local coffee shop around the corner. And I sat there with a hot chocolate getting very cold because I'd be there for 4 or 5 hours and just sipping it every now and again so they didn't kick me out. And then, yeah, I feel quite bad for that, but it's fine. They were all right with it. And what I would do is the first thing I did is I went through and I just cold called people. And I don't know what it is, but people these days just people seem to hate talking on the phone. I know a lot of people that just don't enjoy talking on the phone anymore. I don't know what it is. It's weird. But it's the best way to get an answer to something quickly. If you email someone or you text them or you message them on Facebook, they might never see it because they might get a barrage of messages every day. They might see it and not reply. There's all these kinds of things. But if you call someone, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have someone pick up, even if it's a venue and you just get the guy that's on the bar that day and he tells you who to call or who to email. But you're going to instantly get an answer. And if you don't, then you get you leave a message on the voicemail. Remember to leave your phone number on the voicemail, because I had to call some places back a second time, rather embarrassingly, and just say, yeah, that was me. Here's my number. Call me back. Remember to leave your number. That's important. Because you'll just get the quickest answer that way. Because if you I think a large percentage of the places that I got a no from, that I could definitely say, no, we can't play that venue, were places that I called up, and whoever it was, the bar manager or the booking agent or someone that was on that day just turned around and said, yeah, no, sorry, you're not a big enough band, or we just don't have any slots for opening bands in the time period that you're looking for, or because we toured in December, a lot of the venues had things like, sorry, we've got Christmas gigs on. So that was kind of a stupid thing, and a bit of a bummer, but whatever. So that's the quickest way that you'll get an answer. And once you've made the first 2 or 3 calls, you'll get over the fear of going over people, I think. It's a good confidence booster, to be honest. Speaking to 150 total strangers in the space of 2 days. It's a good way to bolster that small talk. That's a very good point, actually. The way that the way I combated, because I did feel a bit nervous just cold calling the first few people I did. And so the way I combated it is I made up a Word document with a script for myself, almost like some kind of scam agency. And now I look back on it, it's quite bad. But because I didn't want to just get on the phone and fluster straight away and just say to the person okay, bye. So what I did was I wrote out a script for myself, and I just said, made it as kind of eloquent and polite as possible, but without seeming like a robot. It's a fine balance. Maybe that's the kind of thing that you have to bounce back and forth with band members, or I don't know, parents or something, or just other people, just to say does this come across as being, a bit big-headed or just a bit rude or whatever. So I wrote myself a script. So that I could call people up. And I knew then that it was okay, so if I've got this script, I've got every piece of information I possibly need to convey to that person is in that script. So it's okay, we're looking for a gig. That's the most important one. This is the name of the band. This is the kind of music it is. Say something about the band. What are the dates that we're looking for? If you have any other dates already booked, mention those, because it shows that people are actually booking you and that people give a shit. So I did that, and that helped greatly, because then I was able to call people and and I made sure that it was like, okay, I've read through that in some form or another. I know I've definitely gotten across every point I needed to, even if they said no. I've said everything I needed to say. Yeah, so I did that initially. I called all the people, and then everyone that I didn't get like an instant kind of yes, no, or here's my email address. I then just went to the next column of contact information and started doing that. So that, I think the next thing after calling people was emailing them, because typically places like venues, promoters especially, will be fairly on it with their emails normally. Some places do get swamped with them, so you might not get a reply off them. The emailing process was very much similar to the calling process. So I wrote up a script, and in fact I wrote up a few different scripts, a few different versions of the same thing, but just detailing whether I knew the person or not was a big thing. So even if I had some like really tenuous connection, so some of them it might have been, some of them, like the first script I wrote was just a cold email, like, hello, sir, madam, all the details about the band, just having like one link, and if they follow that link, it takes them to every bit. Like, I think I sent them the link and it just had a link to the website that I've made for the band. And on the website, you can, in seconds, just see everything about us. You've got the music we've released, any videos, SoundCloud links, information about a band, some pictures, all that kind of stuff, Spotify, whatever. And then, I also attached an EPK. So for people that don't know what an EPK is, oh no, that's what I ended up doing. So I made an EPK. An EPK is an electronic press kit. It's typically what gets sent round to promoters and venues and stuff when people are booking gigs, when people are doing releases. What it is it's a press package. It's everything that person would need to know about you, and what it is that they're looking at. So it might just be like a one-page document. I made it a page. Actually, I took this from Ash, who did a talk yesterday morning. This was his band, Valet of Blaze, I think, do this. They have a kind of like secret hidden page, and we now do this as well, a secret hidden page on their website that you can only get to if you have the link. There's no button on the site to get to it. And it has your press kit on there, because that means that the person that you're sending that to, they just have to click on the link and they've got everything there, rather than having to download a document, because sometimes people don't have PDF readers, or people just don't want to download your crap. Like, it's amazing. People just don't want to download shit. And it's fair enough, because if they get like 100 emails from bands in a day, they don't want to download 100 EPKs. But if they just click on a link, that's not clogging up their computer with your stuff. And also, if they're going on a link, they can go straight to your Facebook, your YouTube, your SoundCloud, your Bandcamp, whatever. So I found that pretty useful. So in terms of the script stuff, so I had the cold one that I would send to people that I didn't really know. I then had one for people that I kind of knew, whether it was like through a mutual friend or a recommendation of a friend. So I'd kind of say, oh, hi, person. In fact, I wrote hi X, and I just had to make sure I'd delete the X and put in their name from the spreadsheet every time I wrote the email. Hi X, a mutual friend of ours, whoever, recommended I get in touch, and then it was basically the same email, just with all the information. And then I think I had a third version of that, which was very similar. Oh, hi Harry. I had a third email which was very similar, but it was like if I'd called them when I was doing the cold calling, if I'd called them already and had, say, a member of staff say, oh, okay, you want to talk to Brian, here's Brian's email, and I'd like jot down his email and say like, okay, a member of staff gave me your contact. It's just forming like whatever point of contact, any connection with that person that you possibly can, and so that they don't think that you've just found your email off some random part of the internet, because no one, I'm sure if you get unsolicited emails, you probably just delete them straight away. Obviously venues and promoters are much more accustomed to getting unsolicited emails, but still no one likes getting them because they're normally just full of trash. So making any kind of connection you can so you don't feel like a robot is interesting. What's this? As a promoter, a link is the perfect way. There you go. Catherine has just doubled down on my point there in the chat that, yeah, a link is a great way to show your EPK, because then you're not going to annoy the crap out of the promoter, essentially. Cool. So once I'd called people, I'd emailed them, and from that, I think I managed to get like maybe 2 or 3 booked from that, 2 or 3 gigs booked from that, and that was still like I'd contacted maybe 100 to 150 people, venues, promoters, etc. at that point. So like the reward for the work was very small, but that's just sometimes what you got to do. Especially, like, I think what made it especially hard for us was that at the time we had no music out. We had basically, like, our fan base was friends and family. We'd only done 2 gigs, albeit like gigs that we'd put on and sold out, but we'd still only done 2 gigs. So we didn't really have any reputation. We were basically just another local kind of alternative band. And the few people that did book us in were just like very, very kind and put us on the start of the bill. What I then began to do is following up like a week or 2 later, not letting people forget who you are. Obviously, this is a fine line. You don't want to start bugging people. You don't want to be messaging them every day or like every other day, just being like, why haven't you answered my email? Blah, blah, blah. Or calling them every day, because if you annoy someone, they're just going to like block you off and never want to have anything to do with you ever again. And even worse, they might, people still talk. Someone that runs a venue might talk to their promoter, and then the promoter might talk to the other venues, and then you're known as the annoying guy that keeps emailing everyone, or the annoying person, sorry, that keeps emailing everyone. So yeah, it's a fine line to balance when following up if you haven't got a response. I think I typically left it maybe like a week or so before I'd follow up, and just like being very polite and just saying, hi, I hope you've had a chance to review this or check us out. Let me know what you think. And that's it. Just a short, succinct little kind of, so they get a little ping on their phone saying, oh crap, I knew I meant to reply to that email. Yeah, so don't annoy people because they won't work with you. What was I saying? Yeah, so emailing, calling. Yeah, I did initially I wanted to try and make the tour like, when you see professional tour posters where they actually kind of make sense geographically, and they might do like a route around the country or across Europe or, across the States. If you mapped out where the venues were, it would make sense, essentially. That is something I had to sacrifice. Sacrifices had to be made to get the gigs, unfortunately, and it meant I did a lot of driving last December because, we basically ended up having gigs that were quite spaced out. Sometimes they were a week apart. The tour itself actually went over, I think it was 3.5 weeks for 9 dates. So you can imagine there was a couple days between some of the gigs. and some of the gigs were pretty far away. Like, we're up in Manchester, and I think the furthest we had to travel was we did Portsmouth, which we tried to tie in with like dates further south, and we just couldn't. Like, it just didn't work out. And actually, the date in Portsmouth was, like, I was really ill that day as well, so we ended up driving for, I think, almost 7 hours. Got to the gig, played really badly because I was ill and hadn't looked after myself, and didn't know how to look after myself. It being my first tour that I'd booked and run, and then the next morning drove back up, and that was pretty hard going. You know, you learn from your mistakes. So and actually getting on the health part, that's quite. I've not really solved this yet. There are a myriad of people that have, but when you have no money, it's quite hard to be healthy on the road. It's important to look out for yourself, and a big part of the reason for the places that we played, I tried to ensure that we were playing in cities or towns where we had some connection. Because if you're going to go play somewhere where you have absolutely zero connection, you're going to have absolutely zero people show up. But at the very least, at every place we played, we either had like a family member of the band that lived there, or an old friend that had moved to that city, or something like that. You know, so that we'd have someone that would hopefully come to the gigs. And also so that we could try and have somewhere to stay that night. That was a big part, was knowing where you're going to go after the gig. You know, it's all well and good having the tour booked, promoting it to whatever degree you can. You know, we had no money to promote the tour, so it was purely just like, please come. But we went and did it, and knowing where we were going to be each night. Knowing that I didn't have to drive for 4 hours, do a gig, and then drive for another 4 or 5 hours just to get back, was a good feeling. Knowing that we could do a gig and you know, relax afterwards, it's a lot better than stressing out about it. We managed to not book a single hotel or like Airbnb or anything for the whole tour, which was really good. What we did is we either had friends or family that we crashed on sofas, on floors, whatever. You know, if you're going to do this kind of DIY touring stuff, you've got to be comfortable with just chucking a sleeping bag on the floor and sleeping where you fall. But yeah, we ended up staying with like friends, family, even like pretty distant family members sometimes. You know, like cousins, uncles, whatever. But sometimes that was enough. You know, it's just a place to crash. We'd get to that person's place. They'd leave a key under the mat. They'd already be asleep. We'd just go crash on the living room floor for a few hours, and then wake up at like 7 a.m. and drive back up to Manchester for 4 hours because, you know, someone had a job to get to, or you know, I had to be teaching the next day or something like that. So that was pretty interesting. Is there much else to say? I made a load of merch for the tour as well. Basically, I wanted this to be as low cost as possible because I'm a cheap bastard. And I also I wanted to see how much of it we could do ourselves without needing someone else to come in and give us a hand. So I didn't know how to use Photoshop before the tour began, or before we booked the tour, so I kind of like learned-ish how to use it to make posters and promote, like what little promotional material I actually made. I learned how to use that. You know, it's amazing what you can do if you just Google, like if you have an idea in your head and you just go, how do I do this? And then a video pops up and you go, oh, cool, you do that. You know, just Google something if you don't have to do it. And yeah, so ended up like printing just burning maybe 20 or 30 copies of our single onto a disc, printing out some sleeves, putting them in like the little plastic wallets, getting some of the stickers, and just making them look as professional as we could, with the limitations of having no money. I didn't want to spend £200 on getting 100 discs printed, because A, I knew we weren't going to sell that many, and B, like, yeah, that's just more money that we didn't have. And then, yeah, we also made T-shirts, which was interesting, because obviously you can pay a lot of money for making T-shirts. And what we ended up going for was, there's like this iron-on transfer paper. You just print on it with a normal printer, and then you cut out the design and iron it on. It kind of works. It looked pretty good. Again, like, we managed to sell some merch, and like the nights where we sold some T-shirts or some CDs, that kind of paid for the crappy roadside food on the way back, or the petrol or something like that. Yeah, so screen printing is also another great way to go about just making your own T-shirts. It's a bit more fiddly, takes a bit more, like slightly more equipment and a bit of know-how, but again, nothing that you can Google. There was a question here. Did you make good connections doing this in order to facilitate the next tour? Yes, we did, actually. We did make some very good connections. So that's a big part of when we were going and doing the gigs, was not just turning up, sitting in the corner, waiting to play, and then going and like leaving as soon as you finished. It was like, as soon as you stepped foot on the premise of the venue, you were, it was like business mode. So we'd make sure we'd go and talk to every single band that was playing that night if we could. We'd go and talk to the promoter. We'd go chat with people behind the bar while someone else was setting up. We'd go have a chat with the sound engineer. It's like, it's just nice to talk to other people. It's interesting to like hear all these people's stories, and more importantly, you're just making that connection so that when you contact them again, when gigs can happen again, you have that, you have that connection, and you can turn around and say, we loved playing here, last year, or I suppose it would be 2 years ago, on our last tour, and we're coming around again, and we're going to do bigger and better and whatever, and we'd love to come play again. And so having that point of connection is really important. Yeah. So making sure you're kind of you're networking the entire time you're at the gig. It's not just about the 30 minutes that you're on stage. That is very important. Definitely, that needs to be amazing. You need to get up there and absolutely smash it. But the downtime between, like, especially whilst everything's getting set up, when you show up, like, getting there early and prepared, you will not believe how important those two things are. But yeah, the band that looks the worst is the one that shows up 5 minutes before they play, asking to borrow everyone's amps. The people that like make the best impression are the ones that show up with all their own equipment, everything's working, like, you look like a band, you act like, I don't mean like a throwing TVs out of hotel rooms band, I mean like you're a representation of, because at the end of the day you're a business, and so you need to be a good representation of that business, and so by communicating with people around you, whether that be the sound engineer or the promoter, putting a face to the person that they've talked to on the phone, the person that they've been emailing, go up to that person and say, oh, you must be whoever, and it's like, Kieran, nice to meet you, we spoke over the email, and have a conversation with that person. It's not hard. It doesn't have to be life-altering conversation, but just making a connection with that person is, definitely important. What else is there whilst you're touring? I think that's everything I've got to say, unless anyone's got any questions or not. No, I don't think so. We have about 5 minutes left. Okay, yeah, we've got about 5 minutes left. If anyone has any questions, I suppose better leave a minute or two if anyone does have any. But yes, let's just wait. Anyone hits us with a question? Could we elaborate on where people can find you and your music? Yeah, sure, go on then. So the band in question that we did the tour with, or my band, is called Cold Comforts. You can find us on all the usual social media stuff, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. I also just am on Facebook and Instagram, so if people have questions after this that they wanted to ask but didn't want to put in the chat, or they think of something later, or if someone wants to have a talk about their application to university or anything like that, then feel free to get in touch with me, because I happily, like a lot of people, I've got so much free time at the minute, happily have a chat with anyone that wants to know about that stuff. What's this? Also, please explain. Oh yeah, and I also give lessons online in terms of music, instrument. What's the word? Teaching. I teach music as well. So I teach guitar, ukulele, and drums. Obviously, guitar and ukulele I teach to kids. So if you're a A-level student looking to learn guitar, don't come to me. You'll be way better than me. But yeah, if anyone wants any kind of real-world tips and tricks on drums, then just hit me up. Oh, last-minute question from Danny. Hi, Danny. Did any gigs fall through? Oh, as in gigs getting cancelled. We had a venue change at one of them. That was interesting. I don't think any got cancelled, because most of them were just outright no's to asking if we could play. Oh no, there was one actually where, so we did 2 dates in London, one kind of in the middle of the tour, one the last day of the tour, and that was the venue change actually, and it changed dates as well, which made life just a pain in the ass. And I think that's just a case of if you're going around booking tours, you need to really be on it with your diary and your logistics, and knowing, having everything you're possibly, outside of the tour as well, just having everything you're possibly going to be doing in your diary, in your calendar, and organizing that sort of thing. I use Google Calendars. It's super easy and super useful to just see where everything is. Because one of the dates got moved, which meant that it actually clashed with the date we played at the Lounge Bar in Alton. So thankfully, being friends with Catherine, we were able to reorganise that super easily, and meant that we could play both gigs. But again, if we hadn't have had that connection with Catherine, then we would have had to pick between gigs. Would we go for the Lounge Bar gig, or would we go for the London gig? So having that connection with the promoter of the gig was really helpful, because obviously Catherine was very forgiving and able to put us on a different date. But also just being able to communicate with the band members super easily and super quickly that we could the London date got moved, so we were really quickly able to just turn around and say, yeah, cool, we can do the new date. We didn't have to sit around for weeks thinking someone's got to move work and all this sort of stuff. So making sure everyone in the band is really on it with knowing their diaries was really helpful. Yeah. to break the fourth wall. I would absolutely be nice. There you go. Final thing that I just remembered before we finish is sort out payment, if there is any, before the gig. That is something I didn't think about, and it tripped us up a fair bit, and I ended up chasing some promoters months into the new year. Like, I think we got some payment like in February for a gig we'd done in December, and it wasn't massive amounts of money because we were an opening band, and the band that was headlining had sold out that night. So we knew that there was a lot of money coming in on the door. We hadn't organised anything before the gig, but I spoke to the promoter when we got there. So basically this was a problem on my part, and she just kind of said, yeah, okay, we'll pay you like petrol money. I was like, fine, that's okay, that's all we need. Like, we just need to cover the cost of getting here, essentially. Because you don't really want to be at the end of the tour and be at a loss. And you can't wholly rely on merch sales. So, yeah, organising payment. I know it's an awkward thing to talk about sometimes. You don't always want to say, we're the opening band, can we get paid? But it's really important to just establish whether you're getting paid, and if you are, how much. And, as a kind of low-level band, really don't expect much more than like a 20 quid note as a bit of a grace gesture. But even that's enough to, cover half a tank of fuel sometimes. So you kind of have to put that investment in to reap the rewards further down the line. But yeah, I think that's the last thing I had to talk about. I'm pretty sure. Just a sec. Advice setting. Oh, there you go. Beth, on Kieran's mention of payment, I'd advise setting that out in one of your earlier emails from Regent when you discuss in terms of performance. There you go, yeah. So someone that already knows more about this than me, setting out the terms of payment in an earlier email to the promoter. It's just something that totally didn't cross my mind when I was doing all this. But that's why we did it. That's why we did it. You make the mistakes so that you can you learn from it. And I now know that on the next tour, all these things will need to be done up front. So learn from my mistakes. Cool. I think that's everything, potentially, that I had to talk about. Yeah. So feel free to get in touch with me. Any means, any methods, Facebook and Instagram, I'll probably reply the most. But cheers for listening or watching. I hope this has been helpful. And hopefully Catherine is on the other end of this call, furiously squirreling away to segue me off.